Depressing music has always existed. Whether it's traditional folk songs, blues, grunge, or emo, every era of music features a subset of artists whose sole focus becomes expressing their generation's desires through a negative outlook of the world. And the rise of the incel movement in the 21st century has resulted in the boom of the most recent music genre to follow that trend, dubbed INCELCORE and exploding into popularity in the late 2010s. INCELCORE as a genre isn't defined by a sound, but rather by the lyrics. Typical INCELCORE lyrics include anything that follows the same values as the incel ideology, if one could call it that. Most of the songs focus on the topics of male disposability, loneliness, disappointment in one's physical appearance, anti-establishment rhetoric, and general angst about the current state of society. Considering the nature of the incel movement, however, these themes often extend to include misogynist views, with the Incels wiki itself describing one of the genre's themes as today's women being for the most part sluts. Unsurprisingly, the Incelcore scene quickly became very male-dominated. Negative XP, Hard Christ, Uh-Oh Slater, Fried by Fluoride, Pacific Purgatory, Steak Fry, the list goes on. All of the most popular Incelcore artists are men. All except one. She makes an appearance on virtually every INCELCORE playlist out there. Her name is mentioned in every article or video essay on the genre, including incels.wiki, which is run by the movement itself. For a brief period of time, she even managed to infiltrate an exclusive INCELCORE music supergroup, one that distinctly describes themselves as a boys club. So, how did one woman manage to sneak into the INCELCORE scene and solidify her music as a piece of the genre's history? Before I delve further into this topic, I need to provide a quick disclaimer. Due to the relatively niche nature of the genre, a lot of the information from throughout the years has been lost. Most of the content hasn't been properly archived, and interviews with Gezebelle simply don't exist. Because of that, I will mostly be relying on an analysis of Gezebelle Gaburgably's lyrics and the little information that was archived, as well as my own memory as someone who had listened to her since the Giblin days and was actively involved in the rise of the INCELCORE scene. With that out of the way, let's start with Gezebelle's rise into popularity begins with I Don't Speak to Horse. I Don't Speak to Horse is the opening track of Giblin, the first album released under the Gezebelle Gaburgably alias. The entire album's lyrics are in line with common descriptions of INCELCORE, from criticisms of our society's overwhelming focus on appearance, to loneliness and rejection, from self-deprecating lyrics to edgy references to mass shootings. However, there was one element that separated Giblin from other INCELCORE classics, and prevented it from reaching wider popularity. Most of the songs on the album were sung in Gezebelle Gaburgably's natural voice. Despite the INCELCORE lyrics, the fact that they were clearly coming from a female perspective didn't resonate with the vast majority of INCELCORE fans. This was the first element that helped I Don't Speak to Horse succeed. Gezebelle noticeably distorts and pitches down the vocals in I Don't Speak to Horse, resulting in a sound that can easily be mistaken for a man's voice, removing the barrier that stopped the rest of Giblin from wider acclaim. The second element was the extremity of the song's lyrics. While Giblin has multiple songs with questionable lyrics targeting women, I Don't Speak to Horse turns those lyrics into the song's core and makes them a lot more explicit. The repeated I Don't Speak to Horse sets the tone for the song, with more lyrics in the same vein following. Some of the lyrics push the boundary even further into the controversial. These lyrics, and others following a similar pattern littered throughout the song, would push the average listener away. But within the context of INCELCORE, it drew positive attention onto Gezebelle. Most importantly, the attention of Up to the Wolves. Up to the Wolves was a YouTube channel that centered on fan-made music videos for INCELCORE music. At the height of their popularity, Up to the Wolves became the main platform for discovering new INCELCORE artists. One of the songs they decided to cover was I Don't Speak to Horse, being the first to shine a spotlight on Gezebelle Gaburgably and turning Giblin's opener into Gezebelle's breakout hit. As none of the other songs on Giblin received the same attention, most listeners weren't aware of the voice Gezebelle used in the album's other tracks, and believed she was a man. She was facing an important decision with her next album. Was her next project going to be an extension of Giblin as a whole, or was she going to delve further into the male persona the internet had given her? The answer to that question lies in her second album. Chunk is Gezebelle Gaburgably's second album, and we can see which path she decided to go down from the very start. All of the tracks utilize an angry, distorted voice similar to the one used in I Don't Speak to Horse, and there is a much greater focus on woman than before. Daisy is about an apathetic woman who plays and discards Gezebelle without ever providing an explanation. Cucumber presents woman as only interested in sex and unable to experience real connection. And Snailpilled and Let Down is about the protagonist feeling the worst he's ever felt, and about how a woman could never understand his pain. Speaking of the term Snailpilled, this album marks the first appearance of a character that would appear in much of Gezebelle's music following, as well as living on past her work as a symbol used by other artists in the scene. The song Snail Man introduces the titular figure. He is presented as stuck in time, progressing at a much slower pace than his peers. He's unemployed, apathetic, and purposeless. So, as a way of liberating himself, he resorts to extreme, indiscriminate violence. Snailman's persona eerily fits into the traits associated with inceldom. It's unclear whether Gezebelle initially intended him to be a mockery of the lifestyle or a celebration of it, but it didn't seem to matter, as both the community and Gezebelle Gaburgably's later work position him as a sort of messiah figure. Someone who had escaped the system controlling them and is actively rebelling against it. And it isn't just the mentions of Snailman that celebrate violence. While Giblin contained occasional references to it, Chunk has multiple songs centering on violence as revenge, violence as purpose, and violence as defeat. Deep Web, Squander, Paradoxical Undressing, 45ACP, and, obviously, if you don't laugh at my jokes, I will literally kill you. The final song of the album, Richard McBeef, bridges these two categories. Richard McBeef is a play written by the Virginia Tech shooter, a real-life mass murderer who obsessively stalked women who rejected him. All of the lines in the song are either references to or direct lines from his play. The concept of this revolting song closing the album is perfect, as nothing solidifies Gezebelle's acceptance of her INCELCORE status more than an entire song dedicated to an incel. Around the Chunk era, Gezebelle started receiving more attention from wider INCELCORE audiences, including the attention of Negative XP, also known as Shooter. Negative XP was one of the pioneers of the subgenre and the subgenre's de facto leader. At the time, he was the head of a musical supergroup called the MK Ultra Support Group, or MSG, which included all well-known INCELCORE artists at one point or another. After the success of I Don't Speak to Horse, Gezebelle asked to be a part of MSG and, surprisingly, Negative XP said yes. At the time, he still believed Gezebelle to be male, as the first and virtually only requirement for musicians to join his group was not being a girl. Gezebelle would end up including 4 tracks off of Chunk on MK Ultra Support Group's final joint album, MSG Volume 4. Snailman, Pagan, Richard McBeef, and Daisy made it onto the tracklist, as well as Giblin's I Don't Speak to Horse. Gezebelle Gaburgably not only managed to join a group specifically described by their leader as a boys club, but immortalized her music on their final album together. But Gezebelle's facade was slipping, and her recently acquired male persona would soon start to crumble once one of her pre-Chunk songs resurfaced onto the internet. A song titled SNAILBODY was released onto Gezebelle Gaburgably's SoundCloud sometime in 2020, with the possible release date varying between April and July of that year. It was soon taken down from her account, presumably due to wanting to keep up with her newly acquired masculine persona. But sometime between Chunk and Gezebelle's next album, SNAILCORE DELUCKS, SNAILBODY resurfaced onto the internet and became known as "I hate my body, I want to be a girl," due to the song's chorus. All of the lyrics center on Gezebelle's belief that she isn't feminine enough. She lists traditionally feminine features that she doesn't believe she has, and surrounds them with self-loathing due to being stuck in her masculine body. With the timing of the release, it wouldn't be a stretch to say that being perceived as a man by everyone on the internet only gave fuel to her insecurities. The song's resurfacing caused a lot of controversy. While it might seem obvious now with future context in mind, the audiences at the time still didn't believe Gezebelle was a cis woman. Debates raged on about whether the song was intended to be a mockery of trans people or Gezebelle coming out as a trans woman herself. And once the dust had settled, the majority of the community concluded that the song was indeed supposed to be satirical of the trans community. Gezebelle was safe for now. But with her fanbase already questioning her gender, it was only a matter of time before they caught up to her real identity. Her next project would have to be her final INCELCORE album. At first glance, SNAILCORE DELUXX is in the same vein of INCELCORE as Chunk. Gezebelle still sings in her male voice throughout the entire album, and most of the lyrics are depressing and self-deprecating, pushing blame onto external factors for Gezebelle's state of mind. However, the external factors targeted are very different now. It is no longer women that put Gezebelle where she is, but larger societal structures surrounding her. Chunk had some of that, most notably with Pagan, POV You're a Corpse, and Green Country, but SNAILCORE DELUXX makes that the centerpiece of the album. Being bullied for being an outcast, systems in place preventing you from succeeding despite the time you put into your goals, the unwillingness to spend the rest of your life working a job you hate, the connection our society makes between money and love, feeling suicidal and looking for help, but no institutions in place being able to help you. Childhood trauma affecting your current state of mind, losing opportunities due to drug addiction, having your humanity taken from you by the powers in place, only to have everyone else justify it because it is what they're used to. Suicide is the only option to escape societal pressure. Even the songs positioning women as the factor bringing Gezebelle down don't do it in a misogynist way. They're closer to standard breakup songs, ranging from a failed relationship tearing down one's perception of the self, to feeling your love is going unappreciated, as well as simply feeling lonely and missing them. While Gezebelle Gaburgably's previous work was specifically about women, a few pronouns could be swapped around in these songs to make them about men, and it wouldn't change the meaning in the slightest. SNAILCORE DELUXX has a few incel-bait lyrics here and there, but it is not an INCELCORE album in the same way as Gezebelle's previous hits or any other projects by MSG. It appeals to incels to keep her fanbase engaged, while slowly moving away from the themes that drew them in the first place. Gezebelle could have easily pumped out a filler INCELCORE album after Chunk, but she uses SNAILCORE DELUXX as a transitional period, a building block for her magnum opus and a long-awaited reveal of her real self. The Fridge starts with Caramel Kidney, a love song detailing Gezebelle Gaburgably's recent breakup. This sets the tone for the rest of the album, as all of the songs that follow focus on a failing relationship. Gezebelle sings in her male voice, but she sticks to you and I instead of gendered pronouns, never disclosing the gender of either party involved. All of the tracks seemingly portray the same failing relationship from different angles, but they all have one thing in common: dishonesty. The Fridge in its entirety is an album about Gezebelle Gaburgably living a life of lies, constantly lying to her partner and her partner lying back, resulting in Gezebelle's lowering self-esteem and degrading mental health. Caramel Kidney sets the motif, but the songs that follow double down on it. Nothing Ever Feels Right, Sour Patch Kid, Spider Vinegar, Blueberry Ketchup. They're all based on the concept of presenting yourself as someone you're not to be more likable to the other person, and those lies finally catching up to you as you lose sight of your real self. A duality between all of the positive reception you've received while putting on this character and all of the pain it has caused. So much of the album is just Gezebelle flip-flopping between reminiscing on all of the good times she's had under the mask and how guilty and conflicted it has made her feel. The Fridge positions itself at an interesting point in this relationship. So many times throughout the album, Gezebelle makes it clear that this relationship is only causing her damage, and it is best to finally let go. But she is unable to, as she doesn't know who she is without it, and she doesn't know if she'll be able to form all of those good memories again. In the context of the album, this is presented as a standard romantic relationship, but it obviously has greater implications. Gezebelle had lied to her audience from the very beginning. While it led to a lot of success, the masculine character she had been putting on for 2 years has clearly become a burden. She is now limited in terms of what she can sing about without getting backlash from her fans. There is a reason none of the tracks from The Fridge received the same acclaim as Chunk or SNAILCORE Deluxe, despite being just as good if not better. Typical relationship conflicts don't fall into the character she was forced to portray in her music. The person Gezebelle is singing to in The Fridge isn't really a romantic partner. It is her masculine persona, with the music for the first time coming from her real perspective. All of the conflict between celebrating the ending of a toxic relationship and begging for them to take you back culminates in hate in Cream Submarine. Gezebelle gives her old self a final fuck you through lyrics detailing how her relationship with her persona had driven her apathetic and vengeful, and how she no longer regrets wishing for it to end. And it does. Wartcake opens with Gezebelle using her female voice for the first time since Giblin. She has officially accepted her real self and the music she wishes to create. She doesn't hate her old masculine persona. It is what got her to where she is now, and she is grateful for having it in her past, despite the turbulent times she's had with that half of her identity. And Wood Chips, the final song of The Fridge, brings the two personas together. It is a duet, with Gezebelle singing both sides. The feminine voice is filled with sorrow. Despite this separation being the right choice, she's grieving the loss of her old music and her fanbase. The masculine voice sings about death, a bittersweet acknowledgement that their separation has been long overdue and it's time for him to die, while staying immortalized in her music. And just like that, the old Gezebelle Gaburgably died. The Gezebelle that reached fame for the first time. The Gezebelle that was noticed by Up to the Wolves. The Gezebelle that became a part of MSG. The Gezebelle that was mentioned in every incel forum or wiki is gone. But the real Gezebelle, the Gezebelle whose perspective we've been listening to for years, the Gezebelle that was making his music all of this time, the Gezebelle whose talent reached his success, she is alive and better than ever. After releasing The Fridge, Gezebelle went on to Twitter to officially confirm that she is a cis woman. She started publicly posting photos of her real appearance, even using a photo of herself as the cover for her next album, Happy Smile. Obviously, this wasn't without controversy. A lot of her fan base didn't take the news well and started leaving hateful comments on her social media. But there was no going back now that she unveiled herself. Gezebelle has released 2 albums and multiple singles since The Fridge. She goes back and forth between her feminine and masculine voice in those, depending on which better suits the sound of the track. but the lyrics now always come from her unaltered perspective. She is no longer making INCELCORE, transitioning into the more general genre of e-punk. While you could argue that she was always making e-punk, there was no mistaking it now. And she picked the perfect time to leave. At the time of the Frigis release, the INCELCORE scene was crumbling. Up to the Wolves was banned off YouTube. MSG disbanded and most of the popular artists within the scene stopped making music altogether. Even Negative XP, who was once the entire movement's figurehead, hasn't released anything new since 2022. His last album, Gamer 3, isn't getting anywhere near the same amount of plays as anything made back in the INCELCORE days. Some of them tried to transition into e-punk too, but they all failed, lacking versatility once they were pushed out of the incel bubble. What was once a growing scene with countless artists now had only one left. The one that was the outsider from the very beginning. I'll end this video with the lyrics of Bruh, the opening song of Gezebelle's most recent project, Gaburger. Then you find out she's a girl and it's like, what the fuck? Yeah, I know so many people that just felt like betrayed by that. Cause it's like, it's different when it's coming from a girl's perspective. It's completely different when you realize all these songs were actually about guys. She just changed the words to make it about girls. Gezebelle didn't get to the top through lies and trickery. She got to the top because her lyrics were genuine and resonated with people in the community. With so many people focusing on the differences between men and women, Gezebelle proved that no issue is unique to one gender. Loneliness, rejection, depression, self-loathing, body image issues, childhood trauma, self-harm, suicidal ideation, drug addiction, purposelessness. Those are just a few of the topics covered by Gezebelle, all of these issues that incels claim only truly affect men. But Gezebelle was singing from the heart, clearly not lying about the things she was experiencing. Suffering exists whether you're a man or a woman. And maybe that concept needed to come from a woman's pitched down, distorted voice for the INCELCORE audience to finally understand it.